hello everyone. My name is Tisa. I'm a senior here at St. Mary's, and I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today. We are so excited to have Jeanne Gannon and Dr. Michelle Wieser join us here today to dive deeper into leadership, women's leadership in business. Jeanne graduated from St. Mary's with a bachelor's degree in marketing and business management. She's had a variety of business experiences from sales to marketing to being the president of Mullins Food and so much more, which we will get to dive into today. We also have Dr. Michelle Wieser. She is the Dean of the School of Business and Technology here, and we are just so grateful to have you both with us here today and learn a little bit more about your business experiences and how you are so impactful in the women in business. So with all that said, I will hand it over to you both, and we can't wait to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Tisa. All right, so the way this is going to go is Jeanne and I are just going to have a conversation up here. I have some questions to ask her about her career, about leadership, about women's leadership, a variety of different topics, and then near the end we will open it up to questions from the audience. So be thinking of what you want to ask, and we'll be sure and allow some time for that. So to dig in first, Jeanne, tell us about your career in general. Walk us through your journey and your leadership along the way.
All right, well, first I'll start with my St. Mary's career, which I was the third of 11 to come here. I had two brothers here when I started, senior, junior, I was a freshman. Then there were 8 behind me. 7 of the 11 actually went to St. Mary's. 5 of us met our spouses here. I was one of those. So St. Mary's is near and dear to the hearts of the Mullins family. My career started, oddly enough, that I was in a family business. But when we were younger, you could work in the family business. And I did that. We were in liquid products. We made sauces. So I ran a packaging machine. I was like 14 or 15 years old. And then at one point I decided, I'm going to go do something else. So my dad had a friend who owned a different company, and I went and worked there for 6 summers. So that company was Griffith Laboratories. By the time I was entering my senior year here at St. Mary's, the head of marketing and sales had offered me a job. So I was very fortunate. I was here for my senior year, but I already knew what I was going to do when I finished St. Mary's. So I started out in marketing there. It was great. I loved it. But little by little, he started edging me into sales. Sales meaning that they were doing a little bit with McDonald's at the time. And so he said, why don't you give it a try? Let's see if we can get in on their hotcake mix. So we did. We became second supplier on hotcake mix for McDonald's. My territory was from Washington State, wrapped all the way down to Florida. A lot of travel. Then also at that time is when the Chicken McNugget, McChicken was coming out. And Griffith got to be a second supplier on that too. So then I was traveling to Nashville, Tennessee, Nashville, Arkansas, Reedsville, North Carolina. It was a great job. I absolutely loved it. But 1983 was the birth of my first of 3 sons, and my travel schedule was so crazy that I thought, I can't do this. So I told Griffith I was not going to come back at the end of my leave. And at that point, my family business kicked in. So my grandfather had a bar in Chicago, and it was Mullins Tavern. But he had made a barbecue sauce, and it got really popular with the people at the bar. So he shut down the sauce tavern business and went into the manufacturing of sauces. We had a family brand. It was called Prairie Chef. It was sold in the local Chicago market, Jewel, High-Low Foods. But then my grandfather died very unexpectedly in 1961. My dad was the only one who wanted to take it over. So he took over the family business, and it was doing okay. But then in the mid-'60s, there was a sauce made by a minority firm, and so they got our shelf space, so we were out. Thank God he had been calling on various chain restaurants back then. So he was calling on McDonald's, he was calling on Arby's, and we became the Arby's sauce supplier in the late 60s, early 70s. Horsey sauce, Arby's sauce, so that kind of put us on the map. At the time, they were in Ohio, so it was a pretty easy commute for my dad to stay in touch with them. kept calling on McDonald's all the way through the 70s. They had a chopped beef steak in the mid-70s. We were the sauce manufacturer on that, but it never went national. But thankfully, because he had such a good reputation within the McDonald's world at that point, that when Chicken McNuggets were being developed by Chef Renee Arend at the request of Ray Kroc and Fred Turner, we were local there. We were miles away from McDonald's headquarters. So my dad got the call. My dad and my brother went over, and with the chef, they were the developers of barbecue, sweet and sour, and hot mustard. We didn't make honey, and that was the only one we didn't make, but that was the beginning of what became just a huge business for our family. So behind that was McRib. We were the developer of McRib sauce. Then it was the salad dressing program, all the unique sauces. It was always easier for me to say what we didn't make. We don't make Big Mac sauce, and we don't make tartar. We pretty much made the rest of them. And when I say made that, we were one of at that time, 3 liquid product suppliers, because you can never just have a single source in any business. You shouldn't do that. But we were one of 3 that were approved to make those type products. So my career then, once I had my oldest, was that I went back to work part-time, 1 day a week, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. And in 1998, I was made president of the company. Even though I have 2 older brothers, it worked out for us to certify as a female-owned business. Yeah, and that worked out for us, and so at that time is when I started my career as president of Mullins Food Products. And we have since sold the business a few years ago, but believe me, it was just a fantastic company, and it still is, and they are still supplying all those great products to all those same type companies all over the place.
Wow, amazing. I think one of the things I love about Jeannie's family business story is that we often think of companies like McDonald's, but don't think about the companies behind the companies. So I think that's a really good thing to think about as you ponder your future career moves and industries and organizations. So let me ask you about leadership and your style. How would you describe your leadership style? Has it changed over the years? And is it different? Would you say your leadership style is different from your male counterparts?
I don't think so. Leadership to me was, first of all, again, I worked in this business with 10 siblings. We owned it together, we ran it together. When I left, we had 450 employees. We always had 3 shifts, day shift, night shift, weekend. So there was a lot going on. And a rule my parents had was we could work there when we were younger, but when we got out of college, we could not work there. So that's why I was at Griffith for so long, which helped me really learn so much about the food business. Then when I came back in, I'm in it managing and owning and operating with my siblings. I think my style, once I was president, was more collaborative. So when I would form a team, if we had an issue going on, I think the most important thing would be pick good people for your team, and don't always pick people who agree with you. In fact, don't ever just pick people who agree with you. You're not going to get that opposing view. You're not going to see where your pitfalls are. You've got to know that you don't have all the answers, and even the team might not have all the answers. But the more that you get differing opinions coming together, the more you're going to be able to come up with a good answer. You may notice I have note cards. I don't do anything without them, so just making sure I don't forget anything. Another thing I think is always be clear in communication. The biggest thing a leader can do is to make known, what are you trying to achieve? Because you can't have success if you don't have a goal. So that was always something when I was on a team, I would try to make sure they knew, here's where we're trying to get, here's why we're trying to get there. The why is critical, otherwise people, they don't buy in. And also, lead by example. So I'll give an example. Years ago, we had to do a global food safety audit. That's just normal in our world. And they were intense. They were like 4- and 5-day audits of your entire facility, all your processes, your people, you name it. And the first time we were going to go through one, we did a practice session with our head of our plant manager and our head of QA. And it was just the 3 of us with an auditor. And right away we were going to fail, and this was in my section, which was, again, this was practice, but he said, you're doing everything right, but you don't have it documented. So that really taught me a lot about organizational skills. So once we had our real first global food safety audit, they're called BRC for us, we we passed an A every single time because we had buy-in from our team. We had a great team put together, again, not all the same voices. And again, when you have a good team, when it's time to implement a program, they are your salespeople. They are the ones who are going to go out and say, yeah, we're going to do this. I was on that team. Here's why we're doing it. They're getting it from all layers. And so I think that's really critical that you find out to always make sure you've got such a good team and that you've got that enthusiasm going.
That's really great. I think your point about the why is so critical. There's a lot of things I've seen in my own career that are focused more on the what are we going to do, and then they skip straight from what to how. So this is what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it, but oh wait, what about the why? So always remember to keep that in mind. I think that's a really good lesson that you just shared, Jeannie.
One other quick thing I wanted to point out too is I think because we were a family business, I think something we got to be really good at was respecting the work-life balance piece. You hear about that all the time. We had McDonald's had a program years ago called Half Day Friday. So we tested it out and we kept it. So even when I left, that was almost one of the biggest things I made sure they were going to keep was Half Day Friday, because our shifts would work longer days, Monday through Thursday, and then on Friday, the day shift or the people that worked early in the morning in production were done by 10:30. The office was done by noon. And it was such a key thing. And years later, there was a gentleman who left us, and I saw him one day, and he said, you know what I miss the most? I love the people, but I really miss that half-day Friday. I could not get used to working Friday afternoons. I go, well, that was something we were really big on employee relations, I'll have to say. I think family businesses in general are really good at that.
That's a really good lesson. Sometimes when you can embed those elements of life balance, it really helps you retain good employees. So we have a lot of young leaders in the room. What do you believe are the most important skills that young leaders can really master?
Well, there's one that I truly had to develop over the years, and that was being comfortable in public speaking. I hated it. I was petrified of public speaking. And I took a class here at St. Mary's, one of the best teachers I ever had, Brother Raymond Long, and that's a class that he taught. And it was just putting my toe in the water to get comfortable with it. It took years, though. But if you can develop one skill, and that will see you through any career, is to get comfortable in that. And another thing I think, and my niece actually pointed this out to me when she was leaving Mullins Food Products, she said, I don't know if you know that you're a really good listener. And I thought, wow, I don't think of that at all. She goes, no, you always listen before you speak. So I think that's another one, which I didn't even know I had. But that's important. You have to hear people so that you can address their issue. Again, it gets all into that buy-in. And if you want people to be on your team, and we always used to say rowing in the right direction, then you've got to be a good listener to their issues. I think another thing I would say to young leaders is ask questions. It's so important. It'll show that you're interested in the topic, whatever it is, and it will also get you noticed that you are trying to learn. So those would probably be my top three things then that I would say as a younger person going into business or going into any career, those are things I would want to develop.
That is such good advice. I often tell college students that now is the time to practice and learn those skills. You're in a safe environment, right? So you mentioned the class you took with Brother Raymond, having the chance to, put yourself out there in a classroom setting or in a student club or organization or even a team or whatever it is to really get your feet wet and get comfortable. It just comes with practice. So really good advice. I also think, to the point that your niece pointed out your good listening skills, one of the things that I challenge all of you to do is to ask your peers what they think your top skills are, just out of curiosity. When's the last time you asked somebody you work with or play a sport with or lead a club with, what do you think I'm good at? And just, have a discussion around that and see how you can build on that. It's really great. So let's talk about women's leadership for a minute. What do you think are the barriers to women's leadership?
And I don't know if it's specific to women, but I think the barrier to any leadership is self-confidence. Again, this is a developmental skill that over time I think you have to work on. When I was made president of our company, it forced me into jobs I didn't want to do. You know, not the work part, not the part at Mullins, the part about having to go out and speak or get in groups. Again, that wasn't my thing. So I joined a group called Women Presidents, and it was kind of like an outside board of directors. I was definitely the oddball in the group because I'm third generation ownership of a company. They were all entrepreneurs. They basically had founded their businesses. So I was hating going to those meetings in the beginning, but over time, because I finally could see I can help here. You know, I'm on a really different page than they all are. I've seen some of the things that they're struggling with right now. I've seen it in my own family business. I've seen it in friends in my own age bracket. Again, I was kind of on the older side in that group. But self-confidence for sure. You've got to put yourself in situations that are uncomfortable. You've got to, again, like you said, practice. It's the only way you get good at it is to really go out and do it. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it. You know, I think another thing that maybe this is more specific to women is women don't always advocate for themselves. They kind of wait to be noticed when really get out there and do something. You will get noticed. But those would probably be the biggest, you know, takeaways on that one.
Those are really great points. I heard recently in a mentoring program that I'm a part of, I serve as a mentor, we were talking about women's leadership and talking about the importance of going from being an ally to being an advocate for yourself and for others. So, you know, being an ally, regardless of the type of allyship you're demonstrating, is a little bit more passive. It's, yes, I support you, but being an advocate is really more actionable and putting yourself out there. So I like that you said advocate for yourself and advocate for one another.
Because it's that old adage, if you don't advocate for yourself, no one else is going to do it for you.
Right.
So you've got to do it for yourself. You've got to know what your strengths are and you play to them, and the ones that aren't strengths, you develop them. So
Absolutely. That's why I said ask your peers and coaches and even your faculty what they see as your strengths and build on those. One of the things that I have often seen, and probably many of us have if we read about women's leadership and related topics, is that it's sometimes hard for women to exert themselves, to exhibit power without alienating those around them. Have you experienced that, or do you have thoughts on that?
I think, if anything, what I've tried to, you know, be very progressive in is complimenting. I think sometimes women can get a bad rap because if they do show their power, sometimes it's just viewed the wrong way. But I think my husband and I have aligned with our kids. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know, you're either going to get in trouble for that or you're not. But I think it's how you say something to someone. You've got to compliment people. You know, if someone's doing a good job, you tell them. And a lot of times I think that's where people get upset. No, you're not noticing what I'm doing. And in the world we live in, you want to be noticed. You want to know that you've done something great or you've done something right. And I think that's an easy way for women to exert power in a positive way. The negative way to exert power is to belittle someone. That's something I had zero tolerance for, even in our own company. If I saw someone going off on someone, that would boil my blood. No, that's not how you discipline somebody. You know, there's a good and a bad way to do it, and you've got to do it in a positive, not a negative way. Negative makes them feel bad, and they're not going to learn from that. If you can point something out to somebody and have it with some favorable statements as you're pointing out what maybe isn't going so well, they're going to learn something. They're not going to hate the experience like they just hated it if they were yelled at. So.
I agree completely, and it puts them on the defensive to try to come up with the reasons why something happened like that. Really great insight. One one other question about women in leadership. How can we all work together to advance women in organizations?
I'm a strong believer in mentorship, and when I say that, it's not just to get a mentor, to get somebody to help you. You have to be a mentor. My mentor was a male. It was my first boss at Griffith. He recognized that he needed me to move to sales. I didn't recognize that. I didn't even want it. But once I got into it and I prepared for it and I understood what I was trying to accomplish, I loved it. But you have to seek out mentors too. I'll tell a story about one time when, believe it or not, our little company was a McDonald's Supplier of the Year in 2014, which was a huge accomplishment because we're up there with all the big companies that are their suppliers, Coca-Cola. It was shocking that we won this. But the couple years before that, Tyson Foods had won it, and I knew a woman at Tyson, and I called her. And I just said, I don't think we're online for something this big, but I sure want to know how you did it. And we went to lunch, and she pointed out some things that I knew we weren't doing as well. Organization, almost like tooting your own horn. We were this little company, and we did a great job, obviously, but we didn't always let people know the great job we were doing. We just kind of did it. And again, sometimes in a family business, I think you're just all doing the same thing and going in the same direction, so you don't find anything you're doing to be unusual. And we were good at what we did. We were really good at it. So I was glad she took the time to mentor me, and I have joined so many different groups over the years where I hope I'm mentoring. I was telling them a story earlier. So last Monday, one of my sisters calls me. I have 5 sisters. And she said, I know this lady, and she's got great business ideas, but it's not coming together. So another sister and I, and 3 of us went to lunch with her. This woman has a phenomenal catering business. She's got a great soup business, and now she's got a jardiniere. But just by talking to her, I said, you're going to have a heart attack because you are flying in too many directions. And we kept just questioning her, like, do you want to be profitable or you want to enjoy your work? What's the key here? And by the end of it, I'm now going to help her write a strategic plan, real simple. We had to learn how to do that in the world we operated, a lot of documentation and things like that. So I said, I'm going to help you just focus, because in order to be successful, you can't be going in all these directions. You've got to put it to paper, or you've got to have a plan. So that's something I'm going to start with next week, because I can see her being extremely successful. But she's got to get things in line first, or just her days are way too long right now. I said, you're not going to be able to sustain this. You've got to figure this out. So
Wow.
We're hoping to help her.
That's really great insight, especially for all the aspiring entrepreneurs in the room. I know we have at least a few of you out there. Tell me about your thoughts on the topic of leading from where you are. So we have several students in the room who will be going out as interns or starting their first full-time careers. How do you lead when you're not in a formal leadership role?
There's so many opportunities for that. It's amazing, especially now. So I would say the first thing you would want to do is, whatever area you're in, whatever job you're in, volunteer for what could be a challenging assignment, because that's how you're going to learn. Even if you fail in the beginning, you're going to try. And again, as we've said numerous times now, it's that practice part that gets you comfortable going to the next level. So I think that would be one way. Another thing I got involved in when I was still working, and now I'm still involved in it, I co-founded with one of my good friends in the McDonald's world, the Supplier Network. What that is, and it's funny, when we first started, it was going to be only females, and then the more we talked about it, it's all suppliers. So she and I approached McDonald's supply chain and said, we think there needs to be almost like an affinity group for suppliers. We're not a support group, we're just trying to help each other. It's a very different system with them. You do work with your competition. So they said, okay, we're not sure we like this idea, but we're going to let you run a survey. And they gave us their survey guy out of Michigan. We used him. It was the highest response rate they ever got. So obviously we went back and said, this is going to go. And they said, we cannot sponsor you, but we can endorse you. That group is now 140 companies, 700 individual members. When I left Mullins after we sold our company, I had to drop off. Even though I was co-founder, I had to drop off. And my friend Jeanne, who's my co-founder with me, went to McDonald's and said, I need her back. You know, we were co-presidents too. She goes, she brings a lot to the table. So I had to sign a non-disclosure with them. I'm back involved when I leave here today. We're writing our strategic plan. I'll be in the car doing the phone call part of it. Wow. But it's get involved. So in Supplier Network, what we're going to be talking about today are committees. And they get sick of me saying this, but I say it all the time. When you join a committee, don't join just to join in name only. I only want worker bees on my group. You know, I don't want anyone who's going to just put their name on it and do nothing, because that doesn't advance anything. So I think a way to get noticed is to join organizations, teams, whatever it is. Be a worker bee, because it'll get you noticed. Because, again, today what we're going to talk about is who are we elevating from the committee level to the board. That's how you get there, is by doing the work. So I think if you have that in the back of your mind as you join committees to always participate, you can go places within these organizations, because if nothing else, you're going to get noticed. Your name will come up when it's time to be looking for something for that next level of leadership.
Wow. That is such great advice. I think that applies even for the organizations and clubs that you're a part of here at St. Mary's. Don't join just to beef up a resume. I mean, you may be able to put a bullet point on the resume, but you're really doing yourself and your peers a disservice, because you can really build marketable skills and get noticed for bigger and better things. That's really awesome. So what advice, Jeannie, do you have for the students here in the room as they embark upon their career search?
Again, I think it's get involved. That's the biggest thing you can do. One other group I had to join after becoming president, and again, we were a family business with all these, and we all worked it. You know, this was not in name only. All 11 of us were there every day, all in different areas, but I joined Loyola Family Business, because that gets tricky too when you're trying to keep a business going or turn it over to the next generation. And what was important for me to do there, the difference is I joined a group that was very unlike me. I was the only female in the room on all my peer groups. And boy, did I learn a lot. You know, I loved it. I loved being part of it. Very different perspective from males who weren't my brothers about how to run the business. So it was great, and there's so many hugely successful companies out there, and it was so cool to learn from them. So again, it's always involvement. It's always being part of being willing to learn, being willing to put yourself out there and being willing to learn. Your efforts will be noticed. I think another thing, when we kind of talked about this, was how do you pick your career? Well, you don't really pick your career. I think it just evolves. You may, but if I could give one bit of advice, at least in that first job, try to get in an area of interest, because it's so easy then to learn when you have an interest in something already. And there's that old line, I don't want to mess it up, so I wrote it down. When you love what you're doing, you're never wait. When you love what you do, you will never work a day in your life, because you love what you do. So the first job is not the end all. The odds of that happening are pretty slim. So pick a career in an area that you have an interest in, because again, you're going to go somewhere within that, or you may switch totally. I never thought I would go into sales. My dad one time said, once I was back at our company, well, don't you know everybody's in sales? Everybody in this company is in sales, because you're selling a product, you're selling the company. So, you know, that was a learning curve for me, something I never even thought of. So,
Just a quick plug for sales careers. That's where I started too, with General Mills, and I loved their products. So again, when you're excited about the industry, if it's technology, if it's sports, if it's consumer goods, if it's a service, it's really easy to immerse yourself in it, because that's what you're reading and talking about with your friends every day anyway. So yeah, you can't go wrong starting in sales. I think that's where I cut my teeth in, gaining confidence and dealing with rejection and overcoming objections and all those great skills.
Got it.
Okay, so last question from me, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. If you could go back to when you were a student at St. Mary's and give yourself
I would
advice.
love to go back there.
I would too. I know.
Everybody who comes up here wishes they were still here.
I know, don't we all? If you were to go back now and tell your younger self, give your younger self some advice, what would it be?
I think just based on everything I've just said, it would be all of the above, but I think it would be embrace every opportunity you get. You never know what is going to be that door that's going to open. It might be totally, believe me, I always thought my brother would be president of the company, and I wanted him to be. And he was for a year, but again, once we certified, it needed to be. And it was funny, I said to him one day, Mike, I feel so bad, you were supposed to be president, and now it's me. He goes, I hated it. I hated it. I liked the HR part. I liked dealing with the technology side. He's an operations guy, and he's great at it. So you just never know what door is going to be yours, but embrace those opportunities.
That's really great. Look at everything with eyes wide open. Okay, we have some time for questions from this group on anything on leadership, women's leadership, entrepreneurship, anything is fair game. And we'll pass a microphone around just so we can make sure we can all hear you. Questions?
Any questions?
Otherwise, I'm going to start asking questions.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you for being here today. How can men go from being an ally to an advocate for women's leadership?
Kind of what I was already talking about. Please notice those females that you're in contact with. Notice the great job they're doing and encourage them. I don't know why there's still that feeling sometimes. I believe me when I tell you it's gotten better. I grew up I was in the work world in the 70s, and it was very much more male dominated. So I think anything a male, and again, my mentor was my boss. He was great. But I think anything you can do to encourage females to advocate for themselves and to join these groups and get noticed is very good for them.
Oh, okay.
Keep you popping.
That's okay. I'm getting all my steps in today.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries.
Hi, I'm Grace Hubble. I'm a nursing major here, but you mentioned multiple times women advocating for themselves. How what is an example you want us to best advocate for ourselves in the most respectful manner?
First of all, when you take on the job, do it well. That's being noticed is because probably you've done something. I'm not ever saying, look at me kind of thing, but what I am saying is I'm a person who, when I was given any task, even bringing note cards today after all these years, I would over-prepare. That's just my style. So do the job, do it to the best of your ability, and you'll get noticed, Someone else may try to take credit for it at some point in your career, but that's okay. You're going to continue to do a great job, and that's how you can advocate for yourself.
It's a great answer. I think preparation is just so important too, whether you're negotiating a pay raise or asking for more people to be on your team or, advocating for a new resource for your department or organization, doing the research, synthesizing it in a really brief way. So I'm a big fan of one-pagers. So building the case for what you're asking for, whether it's for yourself individually or on behalf of your organization, put the facts down on paper. And be bold. Go for it.
My family, especially my sisters, used to make fun of me. My desk was covered with Post-it notes.
Yeah.
They're everywhere because I didn't want to forget anything. So.
Gotta love a Post-it. Others?
Again, thank you so much for being here and sharing your expertise with the group today. My question for you is, you've spoken a couple of times about your fantastic relationship with your mentor. Could you speak to the audience about what does that look like in terms of both give and take and making it a mutually beneficial relationship?
I just knew when I was working for this gentleman that he had my best interests at heart. He, again, saw things in me I didn't see, that I should be on the sales side. I always saw myself as more of an analytical person, and when he gave me this opportunity, I was so overwhelmed by it in a bad way. I was petrified. But he believed in me. He said, you can do this, you know. You're going to grow during this opportunity. And when I left Griffith, McDonald's was their third largest account. So it worked. You know, I was fortunate that he had that faith in me. So when I try to mentor someone like this woman we're going to start to work with, and this isn't a business for us, my sisters and I just want to help her. She has such potential to be successful, and we see that in her. But she's so disorganized, it's not going to work. And so if nothing else, if I can get her to just follow, to write things down as, where do you see the soup business going? Who are your customers? Who do you want your customers to be? Is it going to be profitable? I want her to organize her head so that she can understand that she's got an opportunity here, but she can't be flying in so many directions. You've got to... And we even told her last Monday, we said, you know what, Dee, you can do this. You can still do all three. We're just asking you to prioritize for a little while so that you do one of them well. Because right now, your friend who set this meeting up is worried about you. You're going too fast in too many directions, and that's not the answer. That's not how success is defined. So.
That's a really good friend, by the way, that does that recognizes a need and brings it forward. I would say, to add to the mentoring conversation, the best mentees that I have had over the years are those that take charge of the partnership. So they're the ones that email and say, I'd like to run an idea by you. Are you free Wednesday afternoon? They take the active role in scheduling, in setting agendas, and sending even topics. I'm mentoring a young woman right now who works for a large financial services corporation, and she will email me about a week in advance of when we're scheduled to have a mentoring conversation, and she'll say things like, you know, can we talk about imposter syndrome and confidence building when we meet next? So it gives me a chance to kind of get my head wrapped around that topic a little bit and come prepared as a mentor.
And I viewed my entire Women Presidents organization, which was, I think the biggest we got in my chapter was 15 members, but I viewed all of them as my mentors, and I was mentoring them. And the thing that they forced me to do was be accountable. So if I said at a meeting, well, we're going to get this piece of equipment bought by blah, 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 they would hold me to it and say, hey, how'd that work out? You know, so you just can't say it. You have to be willing to do it. And that gets back to where, to me, that means putting it to paper, writing it down so that there's a goal. Years ago, when we first had to come up with all these strategic plans, I had a team that worked on this, and then we posted them on big pages all throughout our factory, and it was a pretty large footprint. They were everywhere. They meant nothing to them because we never explained it. So one time I was at our managers meeting, I go, you're probably wondering what all those are. Well, that's our strategic plan. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And I said, I'm just going to give you a real basic definition. It's a map. We can't get somewhere if we didn't plan to get there, and here's the map. So this is our map of what we're trying to accomplish. So at least they knew why it was all over the building. So.
Maybe one or two more questions, and then we can, yeah, thanks.
Hi there. Regarding your sales career that you mentioned, how did you learn to love some of the difficulties that you mentioned at the beginning?
Getting over the obstacles of it. So again, because I had that fear of public speaking for sure and calling on someone, I just had to practice that. And I had to believe in my product, which I did. I had great products. I had hot cake mix, and I had all those things that went into McNugget batter and breading and chicken, you know. So, but I was competing with someone too. So it was the skill set of total belief in the product and being able to differentiate my product, which had to be the same as their product, but pricing, our customer service, you can call. Even in my family business, our claim to fame was, if anyone called us, you were going to get an owner. We don't care if you got a complaint or if you got a compliment, you're going to talk to one of the owners. So it was just something like that, to be readily accessible and to really believe in your product and know that you're giving the best in customer service. And pricing is sometimes out of your hands, but doing the best you can.
Thanks, everyone.